Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, the board will participate in a special meeting. It will be conducted using Google Meet technology for board members and staff who are participating live. Viewers and listeners can access the meeting today by either watching on Comcast channel 235 or by using the YouTube link on our webpage at palmbeachschools.org. We also offer a listening-only option which the public can access by calling 561-357-5900 or toll-free at 1-866-930-7015. The meeting ID is 1-561-880-1124 with a pound sign. I now call the special meeting to order. Mrs. Bass, will you please call the roll?
Yes. District 1, Barbara McQuinn.
Here.
District 2, Chuck Shaw.
Here.
District 3, Karen Brill.
Here.
District 4, Erica Whitfield.
Here.
District 5, Frank Barbieri.
Here.
District 6, Marcia Andrews.
Here.
District 7, Deborah Robinson.
Here.
We have quorum with all 7 board members present. Also joining us on our virtual dais is Superintendent Dr. Donald Fenoy, General Counsel Julianne Rico, Inspector General Teresa Michael, and Board Clerk Carol Bass. Senior staff members will join us periodically as directed by the superintendent. This meeting is being transcribed by a closed captioner, so remember to speak at a reasonable pace. Now please direct your attention to the flag on the screen. Dr. Fenoy, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Fenoy. A quick review of our meeting protocols. Remember, if you're not speaking, your microphone should be on mute. And please raise your hand to get my attention. I'll acknowledge that I saw you by shaking my head. If you need to step away from the meeting for a moment, please turn off your camera. This is for the public. When the cameras are off for our board members, they are still present in the meeting and they can hear and see what's happening. I'd like to welcome the public speakers who are joining us in person today. While your attendance here at the board office is appreciated, please be mindful of important safety protocols that the district now has in place to conform with COVID-19 safety guidelines. Please respect this cautionary warning that in the event of an interference with the orderly processes of the meeting, failure to follow the safety protocols and procedures, or otherwise disruptive conduct, this conduct will result in removal of the person from the meeting. Please abide by these protocols so Palm Beach County School Police officers do not have to take any type of action. We have no minutes to approve, board members. There's 3 items added for good cause. Item AD1, come on, open up computer. 81, the school reopening plan for 2020-2021 in response to COVID-19 emergency. And the good cause statement for that is good cause exists to add the superintendent's reopening plan for the school year 2020-2021 agenda item 81 to this agenda. Last Wednesday at the board workshop, a presentation was made to the board concerning the reopening of schools. Many members of the public spoke and board members discussed the issue. It was announced that the plan would be presented to the board at this meeting, and this item must be added so they can be voted on for the benefit of the public. As to item BRD4, FSBA Advocacy Committee Representative alternate, good cause exists. In the even-numbered years, this board votes on the representative for the FSBA Advocacy Committee representative and alternate, previously known as FSBA Legislative Committee. And the final item added for good cause is P2 job description. Good cause exists to add this updated job description to facilitate hiring of employees. Mr. Superintendent, are you withdrawing any items?
Mr. Chairman, I have no items to withdraw at this time.
Board members, you wish to pull anything from consent? Seeing none, we need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, seconded by Mrs. Brill. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Are there any disclosures or abstentions? Mrs. Bass?
That was the agenda that you just voted on, not the consent agenda, just clarifying.
Yeah. board members, I would like to ask one of the board members to make a motion to reorder the agenda and move the agenda speakers to speak when we get to the agenda item for which they want to speak, and move AD1 to follow P2 under new business. What this will allow us to do is we will be able to handle the other items that are on the agenda, including the general counsel's contract and those other issues, before we listen to the many hours of calls in. So if we can have a motion to that effect. Motion by Ms. Brill, seconded by Mrs. Whitfield. I already gave a copy of that motion, anticipating that you would agree to the board clerk, so she has it in the records. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Dr. Robinson?
Would you tell me what the suggestion is again, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we typically would take agenda item speakers before we get to the rest of the consent agenda and the other parts of the agenda.
Okay.
Rather than take them earlier, I'd like to move them to the agenda item. So when we get to new business, we will take the agenda item speakers at that time.
Okay. May I offer a friendly amendment to the motion?
Yes, ma'am.
That would be to reorder it also to take BRD 3, 4, and P2, as well as board discussion items prior to the AD1.
Okay, so because the motion that was already read included moving the three board new business items. So we're going to add the two board. What
Okay.
Dr. Robinson is doing is adding the two board discussion items. Move those up also. So do we have a second on Dr. Robinson's amendment? It was seconded by Mrs. Whitfield. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mr. Superintendent, before your comments, I would like to take a motion of personal privilege and make a statement, if I might. I would like to take a point of privilege to share a very private story with all of you. The story has a point, so I thank you in advance for listening with an open mind. My mother died in 2010. After Mom died, Dad was never the same. They had been married for 60 years. 4 years after Mom died, Dad died. He willed himself to die. He told my brothers and me that he was not going to take his medications any longer because he was ready to go. He stopped taking his medications at the end of March in 2014, and he died 11 days later. I tell you this story because of what Dad said to me when I asked him to please stay with us so he could see his grandchildren grow up, and what I'd like to share with you. He said, "Frank, I'm 87 years old. I've seen a lot in those years, and I'm sorry for my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. This world has changed. This country has changed. People don't care about each other anymore. They don't want to help one another. They aren't nice to one another. I've seen enough, and I really don't want to see any more." Why do I tell you this? If Dad was here and read the cruel and bitter attacks on social media that members of the community are lobbying against one another, or some of the comments and the emails that the district and board members are receiving, he would be ashamed of all of us. His look into the future is coming true. When did we lose the ability to feel empathy for one another? When did common courtesy become politically incorrect? When did we forget that at times of great national peril, the way out of harm's way requires everyone to work together to compromise where there are differences of opinion? The virus is not conservative and it's not liberal. It will infect anyone, irrespective of your political affiliation. There is no doubt in any of our minds that no matter what plan this board approves for the reopening of our school system, that there are going to be a great many of you who are not going to be pleased. In fact, really the only common element of the emails we are receiving is that the writer says something to the effect that we know you are facing an impossible situation. We know that no matter what you do, there are going to be people who won't like it. And then the writer goes on to tell us how to do it to satisfy them. They are correct. It's been over 100 years since this world was in the midst of a pandemic that has affected almost every country on the planet. There is no rule book here. We have no script prepared for us. This board will do the very best it can, as we always do, to make a decision which we believe is the best interest of the children in this district. So when you next log onto your computer or smartphone and are ready to comment on something you hear today, if the only thing you can think of to say is cruel and bitter, I suggest you rethink the words you want to use. And remember, we are all members of a community. We are part of something that is greater than ourselves. We are all in this because we love children, and our children are watching and learning what they see from all of us. Thank you. Mr. Superintendent, do you have a comment? Your comments, please.
Yes, sir. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this very important day in our district's history. Later this afternoon, I will read my official recommendation to the school board regarding the reopening plan for the 2020-2021 school year. Before that, we will hear from public speakers who are each passionate about the way they feel instruction should begin in the new year. I am appreciative of everyone who has taken the time to email or call the district or step forward to have their voice heard during our meetings. While opinions run the gamut, all of these people have one thing in common. They are passionate about our children and the future of education in Palm Beach County. With back to school just weeks away, I empathize with teachers who are anxious and parents, guardians, and students who are frustrated as we contemplate how to reopen schools amid a pandemic whose skyward trajectory has recently gained momentum here in Palm Beach County. I am in agreement with the Health Advisory Committee, which emphasizes the reopening plans must be driven by safety and science. Our decisions are also driven by data, research, and most importantly, community input. With that said, it's also critical for parents and staff to understand while the priority is student and staff wellness, the goal is to reopen our campuses as soon as it is safe. Make no mistake, as an educator, and more importantly as a parent, I believe to my core that brick and mortar schools are the bedrock of the most effective educational experiences. However, during this pandemic, we must commit to pouring all of our resources and the wealth of our knowledge into making distance learning a robust alternative until we can safely resume in-person instruction and ensure the welfare of our students and staff in both the short and long term. While I believe our educators did a remarkable job with distance learning in the spring, given the very limited notice they received, the disruption caused by closing schools on March 13 has been difficult for all students, especially those students with disabilities, our children who speak other languages, and just other children who just needed that special attention. For all students, the lack of social interaction is isolating. And for many, that challenge is compounded by the heartbreak of losing friends and family members to COVID-19. And my family has not been spared that at all. So let me be clear. The goal is to get students back in school as soon as safely possible. In a few moments, you will hear my proposed process as to how that return to campus will work, and the metrics which we will be used to decide when that will happen and which students will be invited to return first. Up until the highly anticipated time when we open our doors and invite students back to campuses, I give you my word that virtual learning in the fall will be much more robust and efficient than it was in the spring when our district and the districts around the country were thrust into remote instruction. The academics team has taken extraordinary steps to overcome virtual instructional challenges, provide continuity of learning for all students, and develop and implement creative approaches to the remote delivery of education and social emotional services. Equitable access to engaging grade level content and instructional rigor is a priority for all of our students. The plan also addresses the progress the district is making in achieving a 1-to-1 ratio of computers for students, and our progress in making free or low-cost Wi-Fi much more accessible than it was in the spring. I know with certainty that there is no one-size-fits-all plan. I also know with certainty that many parents and guardians will feel defeated or frustrated by the prospect of launching the new school year in distance learning. I implore you to think about this and what I say and take what I'm about to say to heart. My hope is that despite your concerns, you will encourage your children to make the best out of this situation. I, are the child's first and most important influential teacher. If you undermine an instructional method in front of your children, you run the risk of them feeling defeated even before we get started. We must all empower our children. I also recognize the frustration and fear that many working parents are experiencing as they wonder how they're going to keep their job if they are needed at home with their young children. Again, this is something else that I understand. You have heard the expression, it takes a village, and we are all in this together. In order for distance learning to be successful as possible, we need buy-in from the entire community. I am in the process of working with leaders in the business community to encourage companies to be flexible with employment schedules of working parents. My hope is that we will allow those of you who can work remotely to do so, or that they will provide areas for childcare at your offices. We will also work with nonprofit organizations to assist with affordable childcare options for school-aged children. On the local level, if you are a stay-at-home parent, I encourage you to consider inviting the child of a working neighbor into your home to take part in distance learning along with your children. of course, while practicing social distancing. This situation is challenging, but the situation is not forever. What it is a time to open our hearts and come together in support of our entire community, especially our children. To our parents and guardians who will be home with your children and helping to ensure that your child is learning, please remember your student's teacher is only an email or phone call away. You will have the support of our entire district, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I conclude my comments and turn it back over to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Board member comments. We'll start with District 1, Mrs. McQuinn.
I'm going to save my comments until we get past the superintendent's recommendation about opening school.
Okay, District 2, Mr. Shaw.
I too will hold mine.
Ms. Brill.
Thank you. So no such luck with me. I am going to make some comments. What I want to say is that the decision that we are making regarding the opening of schools are by far the most difficult I have made while serving on this school board. Having raised my children as a single parent, I know the angst and difficulties distance learning presents. Having also raised a child with autism and formerly serving as president of the ESE Coalition of Palm Beach County, an advocate resource organization, I fully understand the obstacles and implications for our special needs population. Yesterday, I watched the county commission meeting and I heard Dr. Alonso state that the positivity rate for children under age 18 is 33.6%. She also stated that x-rays of their lungs show damage in asymptomatic children, and we don't know what that will mean for the children's future health. The Florida Department of Health now confirms over 17,000 children 17 and under are infected with COVID-19. Politics has never been, nor will it ever be, a driving force in the decisions that I make. The safety of our students and employees is of paramount importance to me, and I am sure to the entire board and to the superintendent. Our reopening plans will not make everyone happy, as the superintendent stated, but we need to work together to do the best we can for our students and our employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brill. Mrs. Whitfield.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to take a quick minute to say thank you to everyone who's reached out to us. I've felt in the past when we've had big issues like this on the table, a lot of people kind of write the same things, but so many of the stories that were sent to us were so personal and just made such an impact on me to hear what people had to say about their children and their families and the impact of what our decision tonight will mean for their lives. I just want to say thank you so much. Hearing from you really does make it so that we have to really think about every impact that we make on this decision. And I appreciate you for reaching out to us in email, and for everyone who's going to speak tonight. I want you to know that your voice is definitely heard. And just to thank you so much for participating in your public process.
Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. I want to say to all of the parents, the community leaders, everyone who has reached out over the last week. I do appreciate your comments. This is a hard time for us as we try to make the decisions that are best for our children. Health and safety first. And parents, I want you to know this is just the beginning. We did survey you, but we need to have better communications and make sure that you have a voice and what will take place in your children's lives as we move forward. I promise you that we are listening. I personally am listening to you. And as we move forward from today, we want to have more avenues for you to give input as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Andrews. Dr. Robinson.
I will hold my comments to the end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The only comment I have, other than what I already made, is that I just want all the board members to know, if you don't know already, and certainly the public should need to know, that, as you all know, the health director for this county is Dr. Alina Alonso, and she's on the superintendent's health task force. At the meeting on Monday, She advised that she did not recommend that we reopen the schools with the spike in the virus infections in Palm Beach County. When the superintendent and I discussed that, I suggested we get a letter from her so that we can make sure that that's included, because that's part of Corcoran's executive order, is that we have to open the schools unless we get advice from the local healthcare district to keep them closed. Well, she was in the process of negotiating that, and then she got a call from the Surgeon General from the state of Florida that told her to keep her mouth shut and not speak about it. And I know that's a fact because it's been confirmed by several people. Not only did she get the call, but the other health directors around the state got the same call, that they should not get involved with the school district's decisions on whether or not to reopen schools. So I just want the public to know, although the Commissioner of Education said we had to open schools unless we had the health director tell us that it was dangerous to do that, somebody from the state, the Surgeon General, I was told, called her and told her not to get involved with decision makings for the school district. So Dr. Robbins, you can shake your head all you want to, but that's the facts. The newspaper has it today because they found out about it. Both the Sunset and the Palm Beach Post both have the story. So you know what? The head of the health department is this person we're supposed to depend on to make healthcare decisions for this county and give us advice on what's in the best interest of the children and the 23,000 employees in our school system. And when she doesn't want to do her job because she's being politically silenced by Tallahassee, it's shameful. I don't blame her, although she's got a job to do and she should have done her job, but it's shameful that Tallahassee would ask her to stay out of the mix when it's by their own order. We're supposed to get her input before we decide on what to do here. Dr. Robinson?
So I understand very clearly what the truth is. I'm just not sure that it's great strategy for us to have this conversation in this way. Thank you.
Well, you know what, Dr. Robinson, the problem here is that, the community is looking at us to try and make the best decision we can. I've always said, and you and I agreed, that we should base that on medical science. So who's best to give us medical science and advice is the doctor that's in charge of the health district. And when she's told to keep her mouth shut and not help us, that's problematic for me. And I think the public should know that we're trying to do what's in the best interest of the children, but the health director's been told not to help us make that decision. That's all I have to say about that. But it needed to be brought out because the public needs to know that the politics behind this is causing issues for us to make decisions that are in the best interest of kids. Board members, we have 3 items on the consent agenda, BRD1, BRD2, P1. Does anybody want to pull any of those? All right, we need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Ms. Brill, seconded by Mrs. Whitfield. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. That'll take us to the first item under new business, which will be BRD3, resolution condemning racism.
Yes, sir. Let me pull it up. BRD3, I recommend the board approve the resolution condemning racism and affirming the district's commitment to an inclusive school environment for all.
Motion by Mrs. Andrews, seconded by Ms. Brill. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item is BRD4, FSBA Advocacy Committee Representative and Alternate. Dr. Fenoy, I believe that the BRD is my fault. I should have made that recommendation. Those are board recommended items. No problem. It was my fault. I recommend the board vote for their FSBA Advocacy Committee Representative and Alternate, previously called Legislative Committee. Motion by Ms. Brill, seconded by Mrs. Andrews. Mrs. Andrews, you want to take this? Since you know who's who and what's got to be done? No, I'm asking if you want to start the discussion off. Go ahead.
Yes, I will. I've served as your legislative appointee, and I think Mrs. Brill has been my backup. I've attended all the meetings, and it has been a pleasure. I would love to continue, but I'm always willing to step up if someone wants to take that position. They've changed the name to advocacy, but it's the same as what we have been doing before, really working on the legislative issues. And now more than ever before, as we look at the state as well as the federal, it's just so critical that we are very much involved from FSBA, state level and national level. And I've enjoyed my time.
Ms. Brill?
Thank you. And I think that Mrs. Andrews has done a fabulous job. I don't want to see her leave. What I will tell you is that you will see me more active as well as your backup, since I've made the commitment to stay on the school board to get us through this crisis. We all need to work together. These are all our babies, all our employees. And so I look forward to supporting you, Mrs. Andrews, in your efforts.
All right, board members, does somebody want to make a motion to modify the motion to add in that Mrs. Andrews and Ms. Brilla are two people that will be doing that? Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, seconded by Ms. McQuinn. Any discussion? All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All in favor of the motion that said we were going to vote on, discuss it? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mr. Superintendent, the next item on the agenda is P2, job description.
Yes, sir. I recommend the board approve the job description as submitted. Did you guys hear me? No.
I'm sorry, yes. Motion by Mrs. Andrews, seconded by Vice Chairman Shaw. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. The board discussing, the next item is BD1, which is a board discussion item. Mrs. McQuinn, I have a suggestion for you. If you do it as a board discussion item, then it's got to be put back on the agenda for next week. If you just want to wait till we get to 81, if you want to make a motion or change the start date of the school year, that's probably the appropriate time to do that.
Yes, I have let Mrs. Bass know that that is my intent, so I will wait until we have the motion. Right? Is that okay?
Absolutely. I think that's the best place to do it. Otherwise, remember, on the board discussion items, we discuss it and then we put it on the agenda for the next meeting. So we don't want to have to do that next week. We have to obviously do it this week.
Thank you.
VRD2, Mrs. Andrews.
I concur with Ms. McQuinn. I'm going to be talking about this as we move through the agenda item and expressing some of my ideas and recommendations. So I'm going to be talking about it, and I think we all will be talking about it, so I can hold.
All right, thank you, Ms. Andrews. Ms. Brewer, you have a comment?
Yes, since we're talking about moving those items over, just to clarify, when we start that item, I would just like to suggest that we have an opportunity to make comments as we go through each section, because that will give us more continuity and clarity, since it's quite a long presentation. Thank you.
No problem. I'm sure we all have questions in different parts, so that shouldn't be an issue. So at this time, we'll go to 81. Mr. Superintendent, before you make a recommendation, we'll go ahead and take all the agenda speakers that are signed up. We've covered everything else, I believe, that's on the agenda. Ms. Bass, is that it? This is the last item that we're going to be dealing with today?
Yes, you'll start with the in-house speakers, please.
Okay, so